In April of 1841, Silas Rutledge made an announcement that shocked even the cruelest plantation owners in South Carolina. He was placing his daughter, Catherine, a 28-year-old woman weighing over 260 pounds, under the complete authority of an enslaved man named Ezekiel Cross. Not as a nurse, not as a companion, as her owner in every way that mattered except on paper. The white society of Colleton County was scandalized, but they had no idea what Rutledge was truly doing or what Ezekiel Cross would do to Catherine over the following months. By November, Catherine's body had changed in ways no one could explain. 13 men were dead, and Cypress Grove plantation was nothing but ash. What really happened between that enslaved man and the plantation owner's daughter? What did he do to her that terrified everyone who witnessed it? Before we uncover the disturbing truth, subscribe, hit that bell, and comment your state below. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. Spring in Colleton County arrived with oppressive heat and humidity that made the air feel solid. The Coombe River moved slowly through the low country, its dark water reflecting Spanish moss that hung from live oak trees like funeral shrouds. Rice paddies stretched for miles. Their flooded fields worked by hundreds of enslaved people who moved through water up to their knees from dawn until dusk. This was wealth built on suffering. Prosperity extracted from human misery. All of it justified by men who convinced themselves that cruelty was simply the natural order of things. Cypress Grove Plantation sat on 800 acres of moderately productive land. Its owner, Silas Rutledge, was not quite part of the county's elite, but desperately wanted to be. He owned 58 enslaved people, which made him wealthy by most standards, but barely qualified him as mid-tier in local society. The truly powerful families owned thousands of acres and hundreds of slaves. They summered in Charleston and sent their children to universities in the north. Over the following week, Ezekiel began Catherine's treatment. He gradually reduced her laudanum, replacing some with herbal tinctures, valerian root for anxiety and sleep, chamomile for digestive distress, milk thistle to help her liver process accumulated toxins. The process was brutal. Catherine spent 3 days in bed with fever, shaking, and vomiting. Ezekiel stayed with her through it, holding a basin while she was sick, wiping her face with cool cloths, speaking quietly just to remind her she was not alone. When the worst passed, she was weak but clearer than she had been in years. The constant tremor decreased. Her speech was less slurred. She could focus on reading. Then real work began. Ezekiel had her walking short distances at first from her room to the hallway end and back. It exhausted her, but he insisted every day a little further. He adjusted her diet, bringing lean meats and vegetables instead of heavy pastries. He limited portions strictly, though she fought him years of using food as comfort, making restriction difficult. While working on her physical recovery, they talked. Catherine told him about the cellar, about what she saw at 12. She described it in detail that made Ezekiel's stomach turn, but he listened without interruption. She told him about years of gaslighting that followed. Her father convincing everyone, including herself, that she was mad, that she invented memories, that nothing she said could be trusted. She told him about the journal she kept hidden. Pages documenting dates and times when her father left late at night, names of visitors at strange hours, sounds from below that should not be possible. Ezekiel told her about his family, about Sarah who sang while working and taught their children to read despite the danger. About Benjamin who at 8 could do mathematics that amazed overseers. About Ruth who loved flowers and picked wild blooms to make their cabin beautiful. He told her how Silas came to the Virginia plantation with a buyer. Ezekiel arrived on April 13 in a wagon driven by a slave trader named Henderson. The wagon pulled directly to the main house, unusual since most slave transactions happened near the barns. Silas came out onto the porch, shading his eyes against the morning sun. In the wagon bed sat Ezekiel. The first thing Silas noticed was his eyes. Most enslaved people kept their gaze down as a survival mechanism, but Ezekiel looked directly at Silas, his expression calm and assessing. It made Silas deeply uncomfortable. Ezekiel was tall, perhaps 6 feet 2 inches, with broad shoulders and lean muscle from a lifetime of hard labor. His skin was unmarked by whipping scars. His clothes were simple but clean. His hands were large and calloused, but his fingers had a precision that suggested skilled work rather than just brute force. Henderson climbed down and handed papers to Silas. Ezekiel Cross as requested. Previous owner said he was quiet but capable. Your associates want you to know this one was carefully selected. Silas barely glanced at the papers. He addressed Ezekiel directly. You understand why you are here? Yes, sir. Ezekiel's voice was deep and measured with a slight Virginia accent. My daughter is unwell. You will be responsible for her care. Doctors have failed. You claim knowledge of herbal treatments. My grandmother was a healer, sir. She taught me before I was sold. The transaction completed quickly. Ezekiel was shown to a small cabin near the main house, separate from other slave quarters. He was given basic supplies and told his duties would begin the next day. He was informed that his sole responsibility was Catherine's care and that failure would have severe consequences. Ezekiel nodded and said, "Yes, sir," when required. Then he was left alone. For the first time since arriving, he allowed his expression to change, his jaw unclenched slightly, his shoulders relaxed. He sat on the bed and pulled from inside his shirt a small cloth bundle. He unwrapped it carefully, revealing. The 2 weeks passed with deceptive calm. Catherine continued improving. Her weight dropped. Her mind stayed sharp. She walked further each day. More importantly, she was translating sections of her coded journals for Ezekiel, filling in details about the Brethren that made his blood run cold. The Brethren was not unique to Culloden County. It was part of a larger network across the South. Connected societies in Charleston, Savannah, New Orleans, Richmond, different names, but always the same structure. Wealthy men who believed their power derived from ancient practices of dominance and sacrifice. They believed they continued traditions going back thousands of years. Catherine explained one afternoon. European mystery cults mixed with things learned from enslaved people. They twisted it into something monstrous. Justification for things that have no justification. And the sacrifice is not always human. Sometimes animals, but other times they take people who will not be missed. Slaves with no family. Poor whites who wander onto their properties. Once I heard my father mention a child, but I do not know if that was literal. Where do bodies go? Swamps on every plantation. Bodies go in and are never found. Alligators do the rest. And this ledger documents all of it. Every ritual for 40 years. Names, dates, descriptions. They keep it because they need mutual complicity. Everyone equally guilty so no one can expose the others without destroying themselves. May 14th arrived. Silas left for Charleston early morning, taking his carriage and manservant. He would stay with associates, attend to business, expected back evening of May 16th. That gave them almost 3 full days. They waited until nightfall before moving. The house settled into evening routine. By 10, the main house was silent. They met in Catherine's room. She had changed into simple dark clothes, allowing freedom of movement. Hair pulled back tightly. She looked like someone preparing for battle. Are you certain, Em? Catherine left the next morning. A closed carriage took her away at dawn. Ezekiel watched from his cabin window as it rolled down the long drive and disappeared into the trees. She had not been allowed to say goodbye. He had not been allowed to speak with her after the confrontation in the cellar. But as she had been escorted to her room the previous night, she had looked back at him once, and in her eyes he had seen something that gave him hope. She understood. She knew he had not truly surrendered. She knew this was strategy, not defeat. The question was whether she would actually go to Philadelphia or whether she had her own plans. The 3 weeks that followed were the longest of Ezekiel's life. He was kept under constant watch. 2 overseers followed him everywhere. He was not allowed to leave the plantation grounds. He was given menial work to keep him occupied, meaningless tasks that accomplished nothing but filled time. But he was also given access to the main house, to the study where Silas kept his papers, to the cellar where the next gathering would take place. They were watching him, yes, but they were also testing him, seeing if he would try to escape, seeing if he would attempt sabotage. Ezekiel did neither. He played the role of defeated man who had made a pragmatic choice for survival. He was quiet, obedient, asked no questions, caused no problems. But he was observing everything, learning the routines of the house, noting which slaves could be trusted, which overseers were cruel, which brethren members visited regularly. He was building a mental map of how everything worked, looking for weaknesses. And at night, alone in his cabin, he thought about what was coming. His initiation would require participation in their rituals. They would test him. They would want to make him complicit in something horrible, so he could never expose them without destroying himself. He thought about how far he was willing to go, what lines he would not cross, even for R.